Hi, my name is Richard Dix, and this is How Did That Happen? A podcast where I look at everyday things or events and try to figure out how they came to be. Every week I will research one topic, and by the end of the episode, I hope to truly have the answer to the question, how did that happen? This week, we will be discussing stuffed animals. You know them, you love them, you probably even have one in your bed, but do you know where they come from? Our journey takes us from the woods of Mississippi to the village towns of Germany. We are on the pursuit of knowledge, so let's go. When I sat down to do the research for this episode, it was initially to look into the history of teddy bears. Once I did that, I realized that the story of stuffed animals was way more interesting, and I will still tell you the story of teddy bears. But before we get into that, I think it's necessary to take a look at what kids were playing with before stuffed animals. And it's about as bad as you think. I had to think about, because if you look at stuffed animals, they just, when they hit the market, they just go, they go off. People love them. And I couldn't quite understand that at first. And then I thought, well, let me look at what they were playing with before that. And I did, and I'll tell you, and it makes so much sense. Before and during the mid to late 1800s, they were basically, labor. That's why the toys were lacking in such creativity. Like I said, prior to the 1800s, children were a dedicated part of the workforce and seen mainly as, like I said, labor. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution created more leisure time, be it a small amount, that the idea of childhood toys takes on the role of society that it does now, like the way that we see them. This is not to say that toys didn't exist before the 19th century. This is just when society started to kind of make them more of a focal point. But more about the toys they were playing with before the stuffed animals. A lot of them were made out of wood, which is, of course, cannot always be the safest. And given what little I know about kids, I can only imagine how some of those things were misused. And while possible, one would not want to make a habit of cuddling with a wooden stick. One wooden toy, for example, was called the Geehaw or Geehaw, who knows, Wimmy Diddle, which is just, you can't say it without chuckling a little bit, which is basically just two wooden sticks. One stick has notches cut into them and a propeller at the end. And the other stick, you rub that stick across the notches, and that causes the propeller to spin. And there's your fun right there. Another toy is the cup and the ball, which I think we've all seen. And at some point in time, it was actually considered to be loads of fun. You throw the ball up and it gets caught in the cup, and you won. But so these are the kind of things that were in favor before the stuffed animal came out. So just kind of trying to give you an idea as to what kind of made the time during that time made people want something else besides a wooden stick. And with that, we'll move on to stuffed animals. The story of stuffed animals starts with Margaret Steiff, who was born in Glen, Germany in 1847. Early on in her childhood, she was diagnosed with polio, and she would never actually walk. She used a wheelchair for her entire life. And growing up as a child, on the way to school, her sisters would carry her in a hand cart, and she would have a woman carry her up the steps of the school into the schoolhouse. She made her way, despite her disabilities, and completed training as a seamstress. After her training, she went to work in the shop of her older sisters. They had a dress shop. She continued making dresses there until she saved up enough money to open up her own business, which was a ready-to-wear felt clothing business that opened in 1877. And this was kind of a thing where you would order something, kind of a catalog sort of thing, and then she would send you what was already kind of pre-created, pre-made. And the company sold clothing and other household items, all handmade by Steiff herself. A year after this company was created, she saw an ad in a magazine that showed a pattern of a small elephant made of fabric. She used this design to make them into pincushions and sold them. Well, it turned out that the children of the people who were buying these pincushions, they were playing with them, and the people took the pincushions out and let the kids play with them. And so the parents started coming back for more to buy more of these quote-unquote pincushions that, then become the first stuffed animals. The stuffed animals begin to grow in popularity, with Steiff introducing other options such as monkeys, camels, horses. This is all before the turn of the century. So this is the official start date of the business now known as Steiff GmbH. I have no idea what the last four letters are for. Is 1880, because that's when she began actually selling the bears. By 1893, the stuffed animals had been shown at local toy fairs, which drove up business, and then Steiff's nephew, Richard Steiff, who had gone to art school, began drawing animals at the zoo and using those drawings for his designs. It's actually Richard Steiff who is credited with creating the world's first toy bear in 1902. Notice I say toy bear and not teddy bear, because this is literally like a year before they would become, before the story, this is actually the exact time that the teddy bear story is happening, but we'll get to that in a second. The first bear was called Bear 55 PB, which is a very German name, if you really think about it. Just so precise. Interesting to note that the same people that gave us Nazis gave us teddy bears. I believe I did mention last episode that there may or may not be a connection to Nazis in this episode. It's not an exact connection. It's just more or less the same country gave us people who tried to take over the world and gave us one of the most cuddly toys also on the face of the earth. That's interesting. Basically, Richard Steiff takes his toy bear to a toy fair, toy fair in 1903, where it is seen by an American businessman, and he places an order for 3,000 of those. He brings these bears back to America, and for the first time, people are seeing toy bears. From 1906 forward, they would be known as teddy bears due to the Teddy Roosevelt story, which I'm about to tell you right now. So, in the fall of 1902, Teddy Roosevelt was bear hunting in Mississippi, which, as we all do, and they couldn't find any bears the first day. But by the time they had found a bear, which on the second day, the president had gone back to camp for lunch and wasn't there. So his hunting party, being the regal gentlemen that they are, they beat this bear up and they tie it to a tree, and they go and run and grab the president and bring him back and say, "Hey, President, here's the bear. We found one. You can kill him now." And big hurrah and all that stuff. And the President Roosevelt sees the bear in its condition. It's malnourished. I believe it said it was a female bear. It had been beaten, by the people in his hunting party, and he said, I can't do this. It's not right. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but it would go against his nature. He thought that it was against his code as a sportsman, as a huntsman. And so once this story is found out, a political cartoon is created about it and circulated in the newspapers, and I believe it's titled "Drawing a Line in Mississippi." And so what happened is that the toy bears coming across the Atlantic coincided with the story of Teddy Roosevelt and not killing this bear at the same time, to then create the narrative from the toy makers to then call the toy bears Teddy's bear. And that's how we actually get teddy bears. Like I said, that was the initial focus of this podcast, but once I found that out within like 5 seconds. I was like, that can't be the whole podcast, so let me go deeper and find out the stuffed animals and find out that they actually, believe it or not, the whole story comes together. But that is why we do this. The Steiff company is still in the business of making stuffed animals. The first business that they made, the first house that they were in, has been made into kind of an historic kind of museum sort of thing. But the stuffed animal has gone from a pincushion to a plush toy to a Beanie Baby to a necessary gift on Valentine's Day, and that all happened because of a German woman in a wheelchair who used to make dresses. I don't know. I think it's worth. I think it's worth finding out, and I can honestly say at the end of this episode, I know how that happened. And the next time that I look at a teddy bear, or a stuffed animal of any kind, or even a pincushion for that matter, or even maybe a woman in a wheelchair, I'm not sure, I might think about this whole entire ordeal. And that's been another episode of How Did That Happen? Thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, I've been your host, Richard Dix. The next episode is going to be on the 5-day work week, so you can look for that, like I said, coming out on Mondays. I've been appreciating anybody who's been listening, and we'll see you guys next week.